From Bishop Ireton High School, it's Real World Wednesdays, a show featuring alumni and friends of the school for the Cardinal community and beyond. I'm Ryan Fannin, Associate Director of Advancement and a member of the BI class of 1989. And on the show today is Kristin Sterbenz Engel, Bishop Ireton class of 1992, who had the unique experience of spending her high school days at both St. Mary's Academy and Bishop Ireton High School. When St. Mary's Academy closed their doors in 1990, it was the final chapter in its storied 121-year history. But for the students at SMA who didn't graduate in 1990, they were left without a school to return to. That's when Bishop Ireton opened its doors to co-education for the first time in its 26-year history. One of those students who made the transition from St. Mary's Academy to Bishop Ireton was Kristin Sterbenz Engel. After finishing her sophomore year in 1990, she moved to Bishop Ireton for her junior and senior years. Kristin was born to a military family in West Point, New York. She and her family moved around the country before settling in Northern Virginia. There, Kristin attended Holy Spirit with her older brother John, and where her mom also worked. When she graduated from there, she considered other high school options before committing to St. Mary's Academy. Her brother was already a student at Bishop Ireton, so the fit seemed natural to her. She started on Russell Road in the fall of 1988 and likely expected to graduate from the all-girls school in 1992. But as we know, the closure of the doors at St. Mary's Academy in 1990 opened a new door, the one on Cambridge Road, and the chance for a co-educational experience at Bishop Ireton. What followed was the unique experience of having ties to both St. Mary's Academy and Bishop Ireton. Today, Kristin lives in Pennsylvania with her family. I had the chance to catch up with her on the road, where we talked all about her distinctive high school experience. But before we got there, we started back at the beginning.
I was born at West Point, New York, where my dad was teaching physics. He was a graduate of West Point. And when I was about 2 years old, we moved around to Kentucky, then Kansas, and then eventually Northern Virginia. Prior to that, though, my family had moved all over the United States, I think 11 places in 13 years. So settling in Northern Virginia became home.
When your family did settle in Northern Virginia, I know you attended Holy Spirit. Can you talk about your time there?
I started there as a kindergartner all the way through 8th grade. My brother was 2 years ahead of me, John. He was a second grader at the time, and my mom taught there for over 35 years as a 5th grade teacher.
Did you know that you wanted to head to St. Mary's Academy after your time at Holy Spirit, or was there ever the thought that you might go to a different school?
So graduating from Holy Spirit, since it's in Annandale near Fairfax, most people went to Paul VI, so that was the big pull. A chunk of people went to O'Connell, but since my brother was already at Ireton, my dad was working in Alexandria, St. Mary's seemed to be the natural fit. And so after visiting all the different schools, St. Mary's was it.
Now, when you think back to your days growing up and your travel and in your time in Northern Virginia, what are a couple things that come to mind of maybe family experience or things in your early days before your high school experience?
So living in the Northern Virginia area, right near DC, anytime family came into town, you always got to go do the tourist spots, right? Go into DC. So that was always neat and fun, and going on the metro and experiencing different places was great. And then as a child growing up in Virginia, every neighborhood had a pool. So I naturally became a swimmer during the summer months, which led to my love of being in the water and exploring that sport.
Now let's shift to your high school days, because you have one of the more unique experiences in St. Mary's Academy and Bishop Ireton history. The year is 1988, and it's time to head to high school. And your older brother is already at Bishop Ireton, and it's still an all-boys school. So you go to St. Mary's Academy on Russell Road. What do you remember about your first time there? What memories stick out from your first few months at St. Mary's Academy?
Well, I was very nervous going to St. Mary's because I was the only student from Holy Spirit going to St. Mary's. There was a couple of boys going to Bishop Ireton, but no one else was at St. Mary's. So it was a whole new world for me. So being that military background, I was like, okay, I can do this. It's a new adventure. I remember loving the uniqueness of the building. It was an old school on Russell Road. There was a beautiful home behind it. It was just a very nice, homey, welcoming feel.
Now, so sophomore year comes, and I'm curious, at what point during that year, which would be the final year of St. Mary's Academy history, did you start to maybe hear some rumblings that St. Mary's Academy could close? And when was the news official? And can you talk about your thoughts and feelings when the year came to a close and you realized you weren't going to go back to the same school for your junior year?
We used to eat lunch outside a lot at St. Mary's. We had the beautiful fields. And I remember towards the end of freshman year, there was talk about this, like St. Mary's is going to close. And we didn't know what was going to happen. And I remember being like, no, like I like it here. Like I like this experience. I don't want to go anywhere else right now. But I was like, but it's just a rumor. We'll see what happens. St. Mary's was a private school. It wasn't part of the diocese, to my recollection. So the funds to operate the buildings and to run the school had kind of come to an end. And so what I remember happening is the diocese was kind of told that Ireton was going to become a co-ed school. And I remember hearing that this wouldn't work. And that made me kind of sad. I was like, here I am at St. Mary's, and now they're trying to do a co-ed school, and they're already thinking it might not work. Well, look at today. It clearly worked. It's clearly a success. But I remember not wanting to worry about it until it happened. And then it was about September, October that we got an official letter in the mail from Mrs. Scafati saying the doors of St. Mary's were going to close at the end of the year, which would have been 1990.
I know you were involved in so many extracurricular activities. You were an outstanding student. When you add the fact that St. Mary's Academy and Bishop Ireton already had a close relationship and that your older brother was a student at Bishop Ireton, I can imagine you had a pretty good familiarity with Bishop Ireton already. Can you talk about your relationship with BI before you even started there on Cambridge Road as a junior?
Sure. So Bishop Ireton and St. Mary's did a lot of co-ed events, so I knew that before going in. And then with John being 2 years ahead, he was involved in cross country. I believe he did track. Don't think he did band at that point, but those were some of the activities that had the co-ed opportunity beforehand. So when you went kind of to some events at Ireton, you saw the girls there from St. Mary's, right? The pep rallies were there, the football games, the basketball games. There was very much a support group.
So St. Mary's Academy closes and Bishop Ireton decides it's going to open its doors for co-education for the first time in school history. From your memory, was the St. Mary's Academy closing and BI becoming co-ed a simultaneous thing? And what do you remember about you guys were getting this information and then you got the update, as you said, during your sophomore year? So there had to be this buzz creating during your sophomore year before you even got there. What are some recollections of that?
Right. So like I said earlier, like I was like, no, I don't want this to happen. But then the more I thought about it, I was like, well, this might be a nice option because I've been at St. Mary's, now be for 2 years. So I had the 2 years of the all-girl experience where you made some really good friends, you had nice relationships, you kind of got into a groove, and then spend the last 2 years of my high school career at Ireton with the co-ed experience, having the different options for classes, a little bit more of a bigger school, which might lead to what your experience would be like after high school. So St. Mary's was small. I think my class was about 75 girls, 75 to 90 girls. Our school was small. So all of a sudden we're going to double that. So that was exciting to think about.
When you think about that time and you were able to look at it with the open, positive mindset that you still have today, was there another part of you that thought, maybe I should go somewhere else? Or was that never the case because it was Catholic education in Alexandria? You had your brother with the connection already there. Or did you think about, and did some of your other classmates think about making that move to another school? And how much did that happen or not from your recollection?
So that's a great question, Ryan. So I remember having the option to look at all the other schools. So my mom was like, well, if you like the all-girl experience, let's look at other all-girl schools in the area. And the big one in that area was Georgetown Visitation. And I'm thinking about it already. I'm like, that's even further away for me to get from where we lived in Fairfax Station at the time to go all the way out there. But sure, let's go explore that. See if that's even an option to get into. And then I really was kind of pushing myself to do like, let's see what Ireton is like. Again, already made friends, already in the area. Wasn't really thinking about public school at the time. But if I was going to continue with the co-ed experience, I wasn't going to switch to O'Connell or switch to Paul VI at the time. I was like, no, this is where it's at. But I think in order to make a decision like that, you have to explore your options to kind of solidify, this is what I want to do. So kind of, saying no to other things made me say yes to this.
Now you're at Bishop Ireton, and all of a sudden it's a whole new world for the students from BI, the students from St. Mary's Academy, and the faculty and staff. What do you remember about those first few weeks and months of your junior year in that co-educational environment?
So I remember it was crowded. There was an article in the school newspaper that talked about gridlock on the stairwell. Like no one was used to all of this, right? More girls are coming in, people are going up and down the stairs. Not enough space for us. I feel like there were a lot of trailers at the time. Yeah, just the excitement and chaos and figuring that out. I'm pretty sure St. Mary's did not have a rotating schedule like Ireton did. I remember Ireton having like I day, R day, E day, T day, O. That was different for us. I think we had a Monday through Friday at St. Mary's. So just having that different experience, but also having the option to take different classes. I personally remember a lot of staff coming over from St. Mary's over to Ireton. So that was like a comforting feel too. My one English class was all girls. What we were studying at the time and our coursework compared to what the boys were studying at Ireton's coursework was different. It didn't align. So that was another nice transition, right? We still had one class that was all girls and the boys had their English class. And it kind of was, again, made it easier to kind of delve into this new adventure.
Next thing I want to ask about is the interaction. You're going through the stairwell and there's all the boys and the girls, but I'm curious, what was it like in the cafeteria? Was it a lot of the girls and then the guys, or was there a mix from the beginning? Or what do you remember sort of about people getting adjusted outside of where they were put in classrooms, whether that was co-ed or the all-girls class you just described?
I remember sitting more with my girls at lunch. I also remember getting in trouble from Colonel Affair at lunch. Throwing something away, was throwing food in the cafeteria. So that was even a different experience. We had different staff that was watching our every move. But again, there was a lot of opportunity before St. Mary's closed down and Ireton went co-ed to have opportunities to interact with the students at Bishop Ireton. So I didn't feel like blind going into it. Band was already co-ed. The boys would come over after school, or St. Mary's girls would go over to Bishop Ireton after school. They weren't that far apart. I feel like they were about 10 minutes apart max. Swim team, I was on the swim team, that was co-ed. Again, the pep rallies, the support, like we would go to the football games. That was a big deal. Right? The dances, right? Yes, all of that was very much intermingled. So it was different being there during the day with the boys and them with the girls. It wasn't like we didn't know each other. It wasn't going in blind.
Marguerite Scafati was a huge figure at St. Mary's Academy, and following its closure, she came over to Bishop Ireton. Yes. What do you remember about her impact both at St. Mary's Academy and then at Bishop Ireton?
She was well loved and well respected. And she kind of understood our age group a lot because she had a daughter that was our age. I actually met her. We went to a field hockey camp together, Christina. And so I feel like Mrs. Scafati definitely had our best interest at heart. And so when she was vice principal over with Father Metzger being the principal at our new school, she was just great with the transition. And it was nice to see a familiar face and know that someone still understood you and had your back.
It's such a small world because my wife, Laura Finnegan at the time now, Laura Fannin, she would become the vice principal at Bishop Ireton. And she was inspired by working there under the leadership of Marguerite Scafati, and our daughter Maggie is Her legal name is Marguerite, named
Oh,
after
that's
Mrs.
beautiful.
Scafati. So,
Yeah.
so many people that she left an indelible mark on with her warm, gentle spirit.
Yes.
Tough at times, as they say.
Hey, we need that in high school.
Exactly, you need that in high school, no question about it. Now, what else do you remember from this pivotal time in Bishop Ireton's history? How did those extracurricular activities change from an all-girls school to co-ed? And were there new teachers you had exposure to that stood out? You mentioned earlier some that came over.
Mm-hmm.
Give us some thoughts on those topics.
Sure. So with extracurricular activities, now you had some more options, or you also had less of a chance of maybe being exposed to a leadership position too, because now there's more. So when you were at St. Mary's, it was small. If you were kind of timid to do some things, you didn't really feel, you didn't feel so intimidated because it was a smaller group. Now you're with the boys. It's a bigger pool. But again, other things to try out. Regarding like some of the things to do, I remember one of my first classes, Mr. Clancy teaching journalism. And it's so funny to think about a school newspaper, right? The things that we had to do back in the day to make a newspaper come out to be published. But that was a great class, a fun interacting class. And that was actually my first class where we had grade levels mixing. So I was so used to just being with like people in 9th grade, people in 10th grade. And then this was a class where it was more of an elective where you would interact. So that was fun.
Now, what were some teachers that on a couple of your other courses, when you think back to your high school days, that left a huge mark on your life with their maybe not only what they taught you academically, but that extra care that they gave, that you think back and say, these couple teachers really helped me grow as a person?
So definitely from St. Mary's, the sisters. I remember Sister Althera as one of my religion teachers, and I was just taken aback by her because you'd walk in her classroom and you didn't think she was a sister because she was just dressed in normal street clothes, but she had this great aura about her, and just the way she would think and teach you to think, like outside the box, like don't just answer this, think about something else. So she was very inspirational. One of my harder classes, it's almost embarrassing to think about this, was typing class. So I remember Mrs. White, and I believe she came over to Ireton too, just like her willingness to be flexible with me when I was not successful with the typing and encouraging me to get better at that was great. And then Sister Anne, Sister Elizabeth, they also came over to Ireton, and I think were there for a very, very long time. They were so dear and so sweet. And then from the Ireton perspective, Mr. Paget was my homeroom teacher and also my physics teacher. And that was fun and exciting. And making the catapult with Mary Beth Ferguson, God bless her, she and I made a catapult together for physics class. That was something fun and inspirational.
We're going to talk about the next part of your life after you graduated from Bishop Ireton in 1992. But if you had to sort of just think about that whole experience, how unique it was. I mean, 2 years at St. Mary's Academy, 2 years at Ireton. When you think back and all these stories you shared with us, if you had to sort of put it all together in a nutshell, how would you describe those 4 years of your life?
I mean, I loved high school. Don't want to go back, but I loved high school. At the time, it was great. You had a lot of growth experience. You had a lot of exposure. And then again, I feel like the opportunities of the schools coming together at that time for me was great with our class. I feel like the 2 and 2 was a nice mix. I really felt for the seniors, the people that graduated in 1991, because they had the 3 years at St. Mary's, but only the 1 year at Ireton. And then the people that graduated before us are sad because their school was no longer there. So like to go back and to visit St. Mary's turned into something else. And so they didn't have those memories. So I feel like that was pivotal for me to have the both and, right? I had the 2 there, nice, great memories, Ireton. There were a couple of other opportunities that happened being at Ireton. There's something called presidential classroom. So, we're talking about visiting DC earlier and all of the sites. You do all of that. You take for granted, like living right there and having all that experience. But there was a group of about 12 of us, I believe, that were selected for scholarships to presidential classroom. And just having that experience and knowing that and meeting other people from different high schools and thinking about, I'm going on to college next year. And this is a great segue into like what's going to happen after.
Now, after you graduated, tell us about your decision to head to the College of the Holy Cross.
Well, the guidance counselor at the time, Dr. Nemshi, was really pivotal in guiding me for that decision. My uncle had attended the College of the Holy Cross and played basketball back in the 50s, and my cousin was already there. She lived in New York, and she went to Holy Cross. And so I was like, well, let me explore. Like, as much as I loved growing up in Northern Virginia, I really was like, I want to explore. I want to get out of Virginia and let's go somewhere else. So I fell in love with New England. Holy Cross was a place where it had the major I wanted to study, which at that time was bio pre-med. I could swim there, which wasn't something I necessarily wanted to do, but I wanted to have the option to do. So when I put it all together, and it was a small liberal art Catholic school, and I just felt at home there.
Now, you later received your master's from Temple University and began a career in pediatric physical therapy. And I'll ask you more about that in a minute. But I'm sure we have a lot of our young listeners, the students that are at Ireton that tune in for the podcast, some of our young alumni, and just all of those out there that are interested in your field. Can you talk a little bit more about your career and maybe give a few words to some of folks that are interested in going into your career?
Sure. Yeah. It's a wonderful career. I love it. I love being a physical therapist. When I was younger, I had to go to physical therapy. I had knee issues. And my mom said, why don't you become a PT when you grow up? And I was like, no, this is not fun. I am being mean to someone, making them do exercises. This isn't great. And then after I healed and got better, I was like, that's not bad. I loved medicine and science, and I loved helping. I loved caring for people. So I thought, let me explore that. So for a while, I did some work at Mount Vernon Hospital with the traumatic brain injury and spinal cord injury units, volunteering there, just getting some hours in. And I just really like that aspect of medicine. I like that one-on-one working with people, having that relationship, which was different than being the physician or physician's assistant, which is something else I was looking into at the time. So before I got into Temple, I was teaching preschool in Camden, New Jersey through the Jesuit Volunteer Corps and working with children. And I was like, I think this is what I want to do. I want to combine my love of being with kids and teaching through doing physical therapy.
Now, a lot of times you hear, whether they're in high school or the college, they say, well, I really want to do this career, but it's going to take so many years. What would be sort of a response that you think is a balance there? Because I know in our world today, everybody's so anxious to just get into what they want to do. But for a lot of these careers, it does take that extra education time.
It sure does. And if it's something that you want to do, it's totally worth it. And it's okay to change your mind too. Like it's okay to change lanes here. I'm like, maybe I want to go over here, or maybe I want to go over here. So if you're interested in something, definitely explore it. Take opportunities to try different things, because sometimes knowing what you don't want helps you find out what you do want.
And you gave an example of where you went from the College of the Holy Cross and then stepped into the work world and then got your master's at Temple. So that's another way that sometimes it doesn't have to be straight through.
It doesn't have to be straight through. Right. And if there's other opportunities that come along, go ahead and take them. Looking back now, when you're in your late teens, early 20s, you think, life has to start now. I mean, you're already living. You've got time, and it's okay. It's okay to switch. It's okay to switch careers. It's okay to switch paths, as long as you're going to something and going somewhere.
As we start to wrap things up, I want to bring this full circle. You've reconnected with Bishop Ireton in the past few years through the Bishop Ireton Advancement Office, some reunions even going back, and other things. And we talk a lot about the impact that Bishop Ireton can have on its students' lives. But what made you want to reconnect with the school, maybe at a time when you look back, and then maybe even just recently when you got together up in your current state of Pennsylvania?
When you have time to reflect on important things in your life, and right now I have 2 sons in high school, one just graduated. You look back and you want to give back to what brought you to where you are today. So some of it was nostalgia. Like I still think of Northern Virginia as, say, home, because I feel like Pennsylvania is my home. But for the longest time, Northern Virginia was my home, and it was where I grew up, and definitely had some very strong roots there. And my family's still there. And so where my children are now, and then looking back to where I was and the decisions they're making, I just think it's nice to connect and give back when you can.
Tell us a little bit more about your family. Before our podcast today, you were talking about your parents and coming up to PA, celebrating your birthday. Just tell us a little bit more about your family today.
Sure. So my parents have been married for almost 60 years, I want to say. It's coming up on that. So the beautiful relationship of love, very supportive family. My dad was always present at our sporting events and our collegiate events. You know, he was a very strong and quiet and faithful man, and in the military. And he took some hardship tours so that we didn't have to move. We stayed in Virginia when he went out to Korea. My mom, again, 35 plus years at Holy Spirit School teaching 5th grade. And she still volunteers there today. She loves it. They love her. It's great. And her example of faith and giving back that way is beautiful. And then my brother, John, awesome uncle, still loves into sports. He still lives in Springfield, Virginia. And so, yeah, like it is a big part of me is still there.
Tell us, if you would, from your perspective, why you would maybe share how others that maybe have been away from Ireton for a while might consider coming back and participating, whether it's in events or donating or just giving their time. Tell us a little bit about your perspective there.
There's a lot of opportunities. You don't have to do everything, but you can pick what fits for you. So having those opportunities for the reunions, or to come back to certain events, or to participate in giving, whether it's your money or your time, or just having that connection with the alumni group is great. I give you credit, Ryan. I reaching out and writing a little note and offering opportunities to get and connect. When you're not living right near in Alexandria and Virginia, where everything might be happening, is nice. It's nice to have that option.
Our head of school, Kathleen McNutt, and Director of Advancement, Chris Gilliland, they've been instrumental in talking about how we have to reach out and sometimes meet our alumni where they are. And you just mentioned that, and we had a chance to travel around the country a lot and see a lot of our alumni, and it's exciting to be able to really have our alumni come home, but also be able to come visit them in their home state at that time.
I loved it. I like the option. I like the reaching out, and if for someone who's being hesitant, maybe that reaching out part would bring them back a little bit more.
That's Kristin Sterbenz Engel, BI class of 1992, who is both a proud Bishop Ireton alum and a member of the St. Mary's Academy family. I'm Ryan Fannin, and you've been listening to Bishop Ireton's Real World Wednesdays.